All right, so we're back at our stove. I'm first gonna start off by putting this again at a number 6 of heat to start browning. First thing we do add is we're gonna add our butter. So you probably won't be able to see me in this, but we're basically going to take our butter to start. And we're gonna put that into the pan. The reason we add butter is it adds flavor, number one. It also will just keep everything really soft and tasty. So I'm putting some butter in there. Don't have your heat too high, remember, because if you have your heat too high as you're melting butter, you're gonna brown it, and we don't want this browned. We literally just want that in there. And so we're gonna add, you saw that block I had of butter. We're adding the entire block. I'm gonna just put that in there. While that's in there, me personally, I like to add some of my seasoning in. Oh my gosh, the smell of that butter. Just that butter alone has a unique smell that in itself is just delicious. This is why French cooking, why the French have such tasty food if you ever go to France. But we're gonna combine a little France with Greece in this dish. So I'm just adding some pepper. Just gonna keep turning that butter. Just take it off the heat a little bit. Let that butter melt down just a bit. And it's okay if all your butter's not melted. It's gonna get melted in the mix. So the next thing we're going to do is start putting our ground beef in. So I'm going to just break it up a little bit. You don't have to break it up too fine. You'll break it up with a spoon in a minute. But we're going to just keep piling this ground beef inside of our pot. And getting that in there. Yeah, at home here we do things the right way. So right when you're done using your bowl, bring it over and clean it. At a minimum, rinse it. And save yourself the time. Remember, you don't have to be staring at your stove the entire time. It's going to take some time for it to do what it's doing. So, again, I'll make sure that's at 6. I turned my butter down just till 4. And while that's in there, as that's browning, we're going to also add in our garlic. Okay, so just get that garlic in there as well. Of course, in our house, we got doggies ringing the doorbell to go out to investigate the backyard. And we're also going to add our onion. The reason we want to add it now is that so that as the beef is browning, it's going to pick up all those onion and garlic flavors throughout. Okay, lastly, there was a lot of ground beef in here, so we do have to season that. So I'm putting my salt in. I know we put some salt on the butter, and I also used unsalted butter. May seem like a lot of salt, but when you have 5 pounds of ground beef, you want to make sure that it's seasoned. Nothing worse than having ground beef or food that doesn't have any seasoning in it, and then your whole dish seems to come across as having a lack of flavor. Getting some pepper. We have a coarser grind for this. It's not too fine. Which I find when it's a coarser grind, it just has a better kick, and the grains that you actually grind up go a little further. They release the pepper a little further. Okay, So we're going to stir that in about 30 seconds. While we're doing that, we're going to wait until this entire thing is browned. We're going to use a wooden spoon to do so. Just to get that butter out and about, make sure nothing's sticking. Get those onions down into the ground beef and throughout. This ground beef is lean ground beef. And as you know, when you're cooking with lean ground beef, it's going to render down some of that fat. Usually lean has got at least about 15% fat in it. And that fat's going to come off. And work with this. So you got to keep working this up. Bring up the bottom. Roll it over, right? Bring up the bottom, roll it over. If you find that you've got a lot of heat, feel free, put a glove on, one of your oven mitts, so that you don't have to, so you don't feel like you're gonna burn yourself, or if it's just comforting knowing you've got a glove on, do that. Again, I'm working this in. And we're gonna keep doing this and keep cooking this beef until it's brown. Once it's browned, we're gonna take it to the next step. Okay, so let's just keep cooking. We'll be back in a minute. All right, well, we're at that point where our ground beef is browned. So we lift that up. You can see here, it's brown. The onions are translucent. Garlic's in there. It just smells amazing. And now at this point, what we need to add, so we have to add 3 things. I'm going to add them in an order here. So we have to add our cinnamon, we have to add nutmeg, and we have to add our fine herbs. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is with the cinnamon, we've got our cinnamon. You notice how there's these holes. Don't worry, there's a lot of beef in here. So what I'm doing with this is I'm putting in some cinnamon. I'm just literally lightly dusting the top just for some flavor. And then nutmeg. Nutmeg is a strong spice as well. So we want to just, again, I'm just shaking. You can look and see what I'm doing here. And that's probably enough nutmeg that we're going to put in that. Then we're going to mix this. So we're going to mix this into our beef mixture. Make sure we get all of that. Some just on the side there. But we're going to mix this all in and throughout. So you should probably stir this at least like for 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half. Make sure that it's all throughout, because you want those spices to get in all corners of your ground beef. And that means you need to make sure you cover by scraping all around the pot, around the sides to get all that beef up. And as you turn, scrape, turn, and roll each time. That just makes sure that you're pulling the ground beef away and you're allowing it to mix. Okay, so as that's at this point where I think we've got that mixed throughout, the next thing we want to add in here is our fine herbs. So we get our fine herbs that we chopped up and we just pour those in. Okay, can put this bowl here, scrape off what we have left on both sides there. Every bit of flavor counts. Then, same thing. We want to turn and roll this into our ground beef. Okay. Now when you smell that, oh my gosh, that's just Amazing. Now, one thing my mom always taught me to do when I'm cooking, especially when you're cooking big things of meat like this, you do have to test and taste for proper seasoning as you go. This ground beef is cooked. I've done it with raw ground beef when I'm making the Lebanese dish kibbeh. You know, it doesn't mean you have to swallow it, but you taste. Tasting, you just need to make sure that it's got enough salt and pepper in it. So I'll use the spoon I just had for the fine herbs. Take a little bit of the beef. Yeah, I'm gonna add a tad bit more salt. Mix that in. Rolling. It's funny in my family because we have my brother is a chef, certified chef. My father, who is a chef and a cook in restaurants. And then me, I learned how to cook from my mom. More of the home cooking stuff. Anyway, we got that. So now that we got our beef, what we're wanting to do now is we just need to do a couple other things now. So we got to pour in some tomato sauce, the 2 cans we had. So let's do that. We got 1. Tomato sauce is pretty liquid, so it's not like you got a bunch left in your can. And let's get that other can. 2. And the last thing we're gonna add is we're gonna add some red wine. So I'm just in my fridge getting some wine. We're actually gonna be using, we got some red wine. I've just poured it in this can just to get the rest of that tomato juice that was at the bottom. Just stirring it around. And you know what? We have some extra tomato juice in this, so why not just use it? See, looks a lot more empty and clean. Just get all that tomato juice out. Do that, get our wine. Be careful, you do this too fast and you don't know how to control it. It's gonna fly all over you. Pour that wine in. Okay, get all that wine. Now we're gonna give this a stir. Now you can see this is getting full to the pot, towards the top. So when you stir, be very careful that you don't spill it all over your oven. And as after we add that wine, now what we want to be doing is we're going to simmer this for about 20 minutes and let it cool. Okay, this has to cool because we need to add some eggs in it to bind it as it goes into the lasagna or moussaka tray, I should say, so that it forms together. The egg is a great binding agent for that, and we will do that. But again, stirring it, and again, like I said, we're going to let it simmer for 20 minutes. Those flavors will all come out more. The fine herbs, the wine will break through all that beef and tomato sauce, and we'll have a beautiful sauce. So we'll be back with that.